Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. I'm Preacher Moss, host of the SOS, a shout out show. Hope that you're having a wonderful Wednesday. You had a great weekend. I want to give a shout out to Omar Kareem at Banneker Ventures. They just launched a $96 million project at the Addison Road Metro. I was there for the groundbreaking, amazing. Also, shout out to all the people that attended the Soulful Eid celebration at Watkins Regional Park in Largo, Maryland. It was a beautiful gathering of people just celebrating the whole idea of this wonderful blessing of a holiday. Like I said, it's the biggest Hajj of the two. And I want to say people came out in full force. The energy was there, the bounce was there, and people just I'm here to say, man, just the pride busting out of themselves, just being Muslim. I also want to give a shout out in advance. I do know tomorrow is Juneteenth Day. I know I'm not a big Juneteenth guy, only because of the nature of Juneteenth, basically tricking black people into working 2 more years when they were free. That's number one. And number two, this is a holiday we didn't want. Black folk didn't really ask for the holiday. Joe Biden gave it to us and lost the election anyway. I digress. Listen, last week I advanced this show, and the week before I advanced this show, today is a very serious topic. We've talked about mental health in the Muslim community and African American community and overall, general population. Today, we decided to take it a step higher. We brought in a professional, a mental health professional, to speak about some of the things that are going on, everything from PTSD to trauma to, a lot of the feeling, the gravitas of just the world, the way we see it today, social media, what that brings to the table, news reporting, what that brings to the table, things that you're seeing on the daily, families being ripped apart by ICE. You're talking about also financial stress that a lot of people are going through. We're not even talking about it. We're talking about pressure on the elderly. You have Medicare getting ready to be cut. All these type of things take a particular type of pressure. Someone sent me something for Father's Day. And they reminded me that I lost my father. They didn't have to do that. But what they reminded me was, even me, as strong as I try to be, the fact of the matter is my father passed. Didn't handle it well. I went through some things in the context of this is the way I was taught to handle grief, and really didn't get into myself. And it took really a year and a half almost to get back to myself. And, in retrospect, had I reached out to someone, I'm not saying I would have been more balanced, but I will say at least being able to talk to people to make sure when I ask a question, am I okay? There's someone to say, yes, you are. So today here on the Shout Out Show, we're going to do something we haven't done in a while. We're going to expand our format. We normally do 30 minutes and we're out. We're doing 45 because we have a dynamic mental health professional out of the Baltimore area. I met this sister at an event several years ago. She impressed me. We connected in Baltimore. And it was about the same thing, the emphasis, particularly in the African American and Muslim community, to really reevaluate and reimagine the impact of mental health, how it can help, how it can heal. These are the things that we've been talking about for years, but alhamdulillah, it's not me talking this time. It's not my conjectures. It's not my conceptual understanding. And then I also think it's not my point of view. It's not my anger. This is a very balanced show that we're trying to present to you today. That's number one. And then number two is the fact that this sister Misbha, correct, Dr. Misbha Qureshi, is a mental health professional and she is a Muslim. So, we do get that balance. Now, I have to say this because sometimes people think because you're an imam or a sheikh or mufti, all of a sudden you are a licensed family therapist. You are not. You're a marriage counselor. You are not. You're a youth counselor. You are not. You are mufti and a sheikh and an imam. It takes training, years and years of training. I mean, these people dedicate years of their life. And when when I say years of their life, I think I'm understating it. And her, I'll give her a shout out. Part of her education comes from University of Maryland, College Park. Whoop whoop. But she's going to tell you guys all about that. And the hope, inshallah, is that we get some good information that you can use, that I can use, that, hopefully we can have it back on the show. This show is going out to everybody. And I know in the second round, when people pick up the shout out show, I hope that you take this information and don't keep it to yourself. Share it. So today, here on the shout out show, We're talking about mental health, getting real about mental health. So, listen, I hope you guys are ready to go. I'm ready to go. I'm happy. I'm excited. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. This is Preach Moss on the SOS. Let's get it started. All right, everybody. Sorry about that. Somebody banging on my door. You know how it is. Um, Listen, I don't want to take up a whole lot of time. If you have questions, please put them in the question section. We're going to be trying to monitor both the IG feed and we're going to be trying to monitor the chat here on the side. I'm going to give a shout out right up front. Get this done. I'm going to give a shout out to Sister Ree. Sister Ree is down in Mobile, Alabama. Peace and blessings on you and your husband. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. She says, hello, family. Next up, we got not permissible laughter, but we have Brother Altaf Rashid. We call him Mr. 6 o'clock, straight up, straight down. One of our day ones, always on time. Shout out to Canada. Thank you so much for joining. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to my brother JT joining us from the great city of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I got some good news for you, JT. I'm coming up there July the 26th. I'm doing a show with Marlon, so hopefully I'm going to see you there. And of course, we got Sister Sonia Salahuddin Dalton, our sister. She's in the building. I don't know what Brother Bilal is, but if you're here, that's all we need. Don't tell him I said that. All right, go ahead and tell him I said that. Thank you so much. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much. And I got your email before. I thank you so much for your kind words. Next up in the game, of course, we have our executive director, Sister Satana Whitfield, without which the show does not work. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And in IG land, we got etymology. We have Ali Running Fountain. We got Kaylin Lead Strain. We got Shayma. I'm sure we get some other people, but that's what we got in the stream right now. And we got Fitness Frank. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Fitness Frank. I like that, man. Thank you so much. So let's get to the context of the show. I'm going to give a little bit of an intro to Sister Qureshi, Dr. Qureshi. I keep saying, is it Dr. Sister Qureshi? We'll work that out. I'm going to give a little bit of some impetus in terms of how we met, how this conversation happened. But more so, I'm going to spend a lot of time giving her the floor. I have a couple questions I want to ask, but if you guys have questions, this is a big thing about mental health. If you have questions, you need to express yourself. Asking questions internally means that you're going to try and answer internally. Asking questions is an outward thing, is a healing thing, it's natural. We're all brothers and sisters. There's no judgment here on the shout out show. You know that. So and if need be, you can reach out to Dr. Qureshi on your own and speak to her. And if there's something you want to say to her off camera or away from the show, we encourage it. Okay. And that's it. Sister Qureshi has put her stuff up there. Thank you so much. Oh, Fitness Freak. I'm sorry, I said Fitness Frank. Hey, man, my eyes on good, bro. I appreciate it. I said Fitness Frank. Hey, it sounded actually kind of cool, Fitness Freak, but Fitness Freak, thank you so much. Oh, your real name is Amin. Appreciate it. Can I just say Amin? Because Fitness Frank and Fitness Freak, you know what I'm saying. Okay, so we're gonna keep this going nonetheless. I'll set this up quickly because I want to get into the show. I got a bunch of questions. I'm sure you guys have too. I met Sister Misbha at an event in Northern Virginia, I think a year before last, and we really talked about the whole idea of how the Muslim community in particular consumed the idea of mental health. And we began to talk about healing. I was coming out of my situation. She was dealing with a situation. and she did something that was amazing. She actually had a bit of a night of remembrance just for healing. It was happening in Baltimore. I wasn't able to do it because I was on the road, but I'm thinking about just the innovation of how you bring love, healing under the auspices of mental health, and how it's effective. That alchemy, if you will. How do we present that to people? Because um, we are a Muslim community, but we are hurting. The things that we see on TV, they hurt the spirit. And you're talking about as resilient as we are as a people in the community, these things do take a toll. And nobody is an Iron Man. I'll tell you that myself. Nobody's an Iron Man. And we do have spaces where we deal with our own vulnerabilities. In talking to her, she presented this idea that, listen, this thing has to be regenerative. The type of conversation that we're having, and inshallah, we're going to have today, has to be regenerative, whereby the brand of Muslim health, particularly in the Muslim community, because this is a Muslim health month here, the month of June, it has to be to the point that it's in the vernacular. When we have problems, we talk about mental health as an option, as something that's viable, as something that's valuable. So, that's the thing. Do my homework. She has a bunch of credits, and I could tell you all the credits, but y'all won't understand that. What I'm gonna tell you, she's a professional, and I'm gonna tell you, not just a professional. She is a sister. She's strong in her dean, and she's bringing this thing to you at a different level. And I hope everybody's going to enjoy it. Sister Tana, can we bring her in, please? All right. Here we go. Oh, hold on a minute. There we go. What are we doing here? Here we go. Sorry about that. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. We got it. All
Oh,
right.
how
Thanks.
are you?
Alhamdulillah. Let me say assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you doing?
I am, Alhamdulillah, I'm doing very, very well, Preacher
How,
Moss, Brother
how,
Moss.
yes. How is mental health treating you? How is your mental health?
It's ongoing every single day. It
Right.
definitely takes a lot of intention and a lot of pouring into yourself mentally,
Hmm.
emotionally, physically, right? So, and I just want to say, before we even get into the topic, first and foremost, thank you so much, Jazakallah, for having me here. As you know, we've been kind of planning this for a little bit, right? And
Yes.
have been able to coordinate this time. So I've been very, very excited to be part of this conversation with you. So thank you
Hey,
for
listen.
having me.
We are overdue. We are overdue. And I hope everybody understands the value of you coming on this show. We appreciate you. So, how do you get to be in the mental health field? What did you study? What decisions were you making early in your career? Is this something that you always wanted to do?
That's a very loaded question, but I will try to summarize it. So I didn't think I did not plan to be in mental health. So I am, identify as a Pakistani American Muslim. So just like other immigrant families, we've been here for about 35 to 38 years now. And of course, like other immigrant families, there's just a few things that your parents tell you in terms of what career you got to pursue. You either got to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer or something. And I had my heart set on going to med school. Yet early on in my career, undergraduate career, I realized I wasn't good at the sciences. I could barely get C's in physics and biology and chemistry. So luckily for me, I took a family studies course, my last semester actually before graduation, and it just poured to me. It was so enlightening that I decided I was going to put all my pre-med stuff to the side and go pursue a degree in family studies.
Hmm.
So with that, I ended up getting a bachelor's from College Park in family studies, and pursued my master's and my PhD in marriage and family therapy in Philadelphia. So almost 20 years now, I've been on this journey of really understanding communities, understanding families. But, it all started with me trying to figure out why things happen in my own family. I was
Mm,
always a curious child. As a Muslim woman living in the States, there was a huge battle around dealing with our identities, trying to figure out what messages do we take in, how uh, our parents attempt to really hold on to our cultural values and beliefs and really incorporate the religion of Islam in an American society was a point of stress. It Growing up during my adolescent and teenage years and even young adulthood, we did not necessarily get along. They say in your adolescence and teenage years, developmental psychology does say, kids have a lot of challenges. This is the time where you find your identity, you're developing your personality, right? So imagine all of that on top of navigating your culture from back home that you're not really part of anymore because when you came in, you were really young, to being pulled from your peer group to be more American, to assimilate, right? So it was definitely a struggle, and I have to name it for what it is. Sexism is real, oppression is real. I was one of those kids that was pushed away from Islam for some time
mm.
because all I heard were oppressive messages. Why can't you do this? Because you're a Muslim girl. Why can't you go here? Because you're a Muslim girl. Well, how come my brothers get this? Well, they're boys. So part of what I've seen over this journey as I've gotten older is I've learned that it's not Islam that we're practicing. It's more of the Pakistani culture,
Right. So, I mean, that
right?
does that play a heavy role in how you approach mental health in the Muslim community? Is it more emphasis or having to deal so much on the cultural baggage that we all bring to what's a universal religion? What is a universal religion? We bring a lot of cultural baggage. Is
Yeah,
that something that you deal with a lot?
yeah, absolutely. So when I am working with different families from different backgrounds, I think people's social identities are a big part of who they are and their development, right? So I cannot fully understand a person's lived experiences and their traumas and how they impact their depression, their anxiety, their post traumatic stress, whatever the case is. I cannot take their experiences in the context of race, religion, class, ethnicity, nationality, right? You cannot take that away from someone's lived experience when you have to understand how depression shows up. So
Hmm.
I'll give you an example, right? Working with a Pakistani Muslim family versus a Black American Muslim family, it's going to look different. Why? Because of the experiences of racism in America.
Hmm.
Black families will have different experiences. Even they may have experiences of Islamophobia, right? Yet I have to look at that in the context of their lived experiences. And then the Pakistani Muslim family, there's so many nuances around
Take
cultural pressures,
take your time.
gender dynamics. Um, I mean, the level of oppression, right? The impact of the British colonization. I mean, we can talk about that all day, every day, right? But a Pakistani Muslim family's experience will be similar, yet very different from a Black Muslim family because of their ethnicity, but also their nationality and their race,
Well,
right?
that's
So
very
when I
that's
have a Black family in front of me,
mm-hmm.
so when I have a Black family in front of me, we have to name there's the socio-cultural trauma of racism. When I am working with a um, parents who have to have difficult conversations with their children about racial profiling. That trauma will look very different than working with a Caucasian family. When I have to sit here and work with young Muslim women, girls who are talking about being bullied in school because of their hijab, and other students asking them to take it off and show their hair, that session is going to look different.
What do you think? Some of the leading concerns. What are the things that concern you right now? I mean, just what are you seeing in
Well, I
terms
think,
of mental health crises, if you will, things that demand your kind of your attention, if you will.
well, I would say right now everything demands my attention. Yet I think there's I think there's a few things, right? So if we want to narrow it down to possibly the Muslim community or Black and Brown communities, I think we're looking at the stigma, right, around seeking mental health treatment is very high, in the sense that we are less likely to seek services and support from a mental health professional than the American white family. I think there is a shortage of competent, culturally driven, but also people that look like me and you in the mental health profession. And I genuinely believe that people are looking for therapists and professionals that can really understand that their lived experiences. And that does not mean that every person that looks like you or is from the same background is going to understand you. Yet, as as a Pakistani American Muslim, I can't tell you how many times I've had Pakistani Americans or Muslims that have come to me and said, I don't want to teach my therapist about Ramadan. I don't want to teach them about why I can't move out of my family's house at
Hmm.
the age of 18 and that I need to be married. Again, I'm not saying I'm the best fit for every Pakistani or every Muslim client, but there's just a different level of unspoken understanding that exists, right? And I also think that we need more programs in the educational field so that people can develop cultural humility, cultural competence, cultural understanding, cultural compassion, whatever it is. I think there needs to be more growth in the training and education aspect of it. But there is a shortage of competent, quality mental health providers, on top of even more of a shortage of providers in specific social identities. And then
So let
I
me.
think the third piece is, I'm
I'm sorry.
sorry, feel free to stop me.
Yeah. Oh no, I was really interested. You know, we cover mental health aspects here on the show, not like we're mental health practitioners. You know, but what we have done is begun to look at the trends, if you will. We talked about Satan and I had a show where we talked about the increasing incidences of suicide amongst Black youth, particularly Black males, which was not really it was there, but not at the level. I'm saying exponentially it grew, and the young men were getting younger. We're talking 11 years old, 9 years old, talking about bullying. Um, you know, what has been the fundamental shift in society whereby these things are so prevalent? What I mean is, and I don't want to say, hey, when I was 9 years old, I did. I'm not trying to say that. What are the conditions that are leading to people feeling so vulnerable?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of different things. I think that there's more exposure through social media. You know, we can sit here and debate whether social media is healthy or not healthy, right? But the reality is, yes, it has a lot of components that are working for us, right? So, but there's also a piece of vicarious trauma and exposure to things. So, how does that play out? The first thing is cyberbullying,
Mm-hmm.
right? There was a point when I was growing up and you were probably growing up, we didn't have to deal with cyberbullying, right? We went to school, and if we got bullied, we got bullied. We came home, cried it out, and didn't want to go to school the next day. Now we're getting bullied in school, and then we come home and someone's posting something on Instagram or TikTok saying, "Oh, I'm gonna beat up this person when they come back to school," or "They look so ugly today." So the bullying has went from face to the internet, where everybody has access. And that's just one little part of change, right? In terms of how social media is being utilized in all the maladaptive ways, right? But then there's also, we have to name the epidemic and even a pandemic of addiction. Access to substances. I work with teenagers and adolescents that have full-blown addiction problems because of the access. Kids are literally smoking and drinking in the bathrooms. There's high rates of trauma. People are starting to name things.
Good having that.
I mean, this is just touching the surface of things. And, even when we talk about the Muslim community specifically, you're seeing more and more addiction issues, alcoholism, fentanyl usage. The rates of overdoses. Right.
Is it that people
talking about it?
Is it the people just hurting like that, or is it this type of trauma? I'd say this type of trauma is different. Let me frame this out correctly. I'm not a stranger to addiction, drug addiction. I mean, my teens and early 20s was spent, in the crack wars here in Washington, D.C. We watched a different type of evisceration with crack. That was a generation. And even though we had the crack wars, it seemed like the trauma was really on the families. Of course, the people who were addicts, that was a different type of trauma. But the families kind of reframed how they would address that. You're talking about different addictions, and some of it does have to do with the fact that people have more access. We talk about porn addiction on the internet. We talk about fentanyl, being able to order drugs over the line. I mean, meetups, through social media apps, all that type of stuff. And I can say this for a lot of my generation, this thing is so new because that's not the way we were taught. I mean, in the mental health profession, what are you guys doing to kind of address some of that? Because generationally, I feel out of touch.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's what I can definitely tell you what I'm doing, and I love it. Okay. One of the things that I am very blessed around, or feel very blessed with, is choosing the field of family therapy. Okay. So there's a lot of different mental health professionals. You can get to doing the same thing and be a mental health professional, therapist, etc. Right? You can take different avenues, different degrees, different licenses. Right? So you can be a professional counselor, you can be a social worker, you can be an art therapist. I myself, my curiosity around my own family relationships led me to want to understand families, which led me to specialize in families. So part of what I believe what we're missing, even in the mental health professional field, is the collaboration and the intention of bringing people to the room and doing relational trauma work. You can do individual therapy, you can do family therapy, you can do couples therapy, you can do art therapy, you can do group therapy, whatever the modality is, or whatever the specialty is, there needs to be community healing. So one of the first things I do is when I get someone, I am always looking at ways on how to bring other people to the therapy room.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because I want the full picture. I want to be able to put together the pieces to the puzzle of the Qureshi family. Why is Dr. Qureshi like this? How did she become like this? Who are her siblings? What has happened to their siblings? What were their parents' background? What we're seeing is some of the reasons why we're probably seeing more of a regression is because there's so much intergenerational trauma that has been trickled down that people haven't healed. They haven't even named it as intergenerational trauma. They think it's normal. So if you think something is normal and that's how it's supposed to be, you're going to continue to keep doing it. If you come from a community of violence, or you come from a community where there's a lot of substance use and it's survival, right? If you come from a family where your loved ones are incarcerated,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to see that as normal.
So
So part of this
as the
work
as
is
the
getting
volume of the
out
room
and healing.
has the value of the room become that much more increased in terms of what we're dealing with? Because I like the concept that you said, getting people to the room.
The value, can you?
Can you expand a little bit on getting people
Mhm.
to the room? Sometimes we can't get them through the door, let alone get them to the room. You know, what's a good way to get them at least to
Well,
the
that's
door?
where you gotta that's where
Can we get them through the
well that's
door?
where you gotta rely on your mental health professional, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
for me, listen, I got a lot of tricks up my sleeves of getting people to the door. And
Please
you know,
share.
one of my biggest trick is when parents come in, this is a very straightforward, it's not even a trick, but when parents come in, I'm very direct. I tell them, I'm like, I'm not a babysitting service. You can't drop your kid off and leave for an hour. But parents do that. They drop their kid off for therapy, expecting us to fix them, but they go back and they're not utilizing coping skills. You learn dad's yelling and screaming, and mom withdraws and sleeps all day because she's really depressed. No wonder the kid is acting out. No wonder
Mm-hmm.
the kid is struggling in school. So how do you expect me as a therapist to help your child regulate when you're yelling and screaming at them? No,
Well,
you're going to come in here.
I think my thing is, you know, my introduction to mental health is that I taught severely emotionally disturbed kids. And so reading IEPs, if you will, gives you this it gives you a portrait, but it's not everything. And it's to the point where you go meet the mother or you meet the father or the grandparents that you begin to understand that this is not a very healthy situation. And generation, you're going, well, that's the grandfather who his behaviors are this way, the grandmother, the uncle, whoever the significant personalities are in that family. You begin to understand that I am dealing with this is the result. This kid in fifth and sixth grade is an amalgamation of all these characters and personalities, behaviors you have in the class. And again, it's the whole idea about how you undo, how do you re-educate people to see the best in themselves, even when they don't see the best in themselves. How do you do that?
Well, so there are a few techniques, okay, that I call them. Yet I think when you bring it back down to simplest terms, is your connection with that person, your human to human connection. So when you were asking earlier, how do you even get them to the room when they won't even come through the door? One of my You got to meet them where they're at, and you have to be authentically yourself as a therapist. I can't
Mhm.
tell you how many times I've been able to connect with people during our first session because I'm able to have them see me as a person versus this nicely put together doctor that has all these degrees. My degrees don't mean anything if I can't connect with you on a human to human level. If
Hmm.
I'm not speaking your language, if I'm not able to understand your pain, and if I'm not able to validate you. One of the biggest thing in therapy is about validation. Why do people come to therapy, and why do they stay? Validation, being seen and being heard. Why? Because they don't get that in the outside world. The outside world tells you to shush. The outside world tells you your voice does not matter. The outside world tells you you're worthless. And that those experiences can vary based on your gender, based on your class, based on your race, based on your religion, based on your sexuality. So when the noises in your head are all, you're a nobody, you're worthless, you're this, you need to lose weight, you need to look better. Why wouldn't you be depressed? Why wouldn't you feel anxious?
I mean, let me throw this out. I've had this on my mind. I am My career has basically been, can we connect with people? Can we what's the word I'm looking for? Engage. My job is, as a comedian, you got to read the room. And part of the reading the room is like, you have to read society to an extent. And I've said this on the show
Mhm.
several times that I felt. Now, I'm not saying anybody else. I felt it. Satana could back me up. I just felt like we were just in some of the most mentally unhealthy times I can ever recall. Number one, whereby people expect for you to deal with your pain. That it is acceptable. It's acceptable for some people for you to suffer, and it seems even bigger now. If you're watching the news, we talked about this earlier. I talked about, what about this environmental trauma that is being pushed on us by the media, by politicians, by ICE, and all these things. And we're growing up in a different era. Our children are seeing things that we didn't see when we were children. Thus, the ability to talk to them or translate their feelings. On top of that, us being Muslims is like, trying to find the halal way uh, to, I guess, bring understanding to the situation. I mean, where do you find yourself in that, in the fact that you are a mental health practitioner, but you're also a Muslim?
Yes, Preacher Moss, could you repeat that because you broke up? What was your question? Where do I find?
I was asking, where do
Hello.
you find sort of like the halal mental health solution to some of this environmental trauma that we're dealing with? I alluded to the fact that our children are seeing things we never saw, and that being what it is, we have to
Mhm.
we have to find a way, of some regards, to explain this to them. Like I said earlier, it's like people these
Mhm.
days want you to believe that suffering is okay as long as it's not you. You know what I mean? How do you find that balance?
Mhm.
Because, like I said, you're a mental health professional, but you're also a Muslim. How do you find that? What are you doing in that space?
Yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, I would highlight that before I am a mental health professional, I am a human, right? So whether the trauma is towards Muslims or just another human, right? It's very painful. It's infuriating. There are times where I've had to take days off because I wasn't able to show up. I didn't have the capacity to
Mm,
hear those traumatic stories.
wow.
right? So there is traumas happening in families, family trauma, like domestic violence. There's trauma happening in communities, like school shootings,
Mm.
right? There's traumas happening globally, internationally, right? So when you talk about environmental trauma, to me, we're also talking about systemic oppression,
Speak on that.
right? There's different micro and macro levels of trauma. And we're all impacted by that as the human race. Yet some of are more impacted by it in certain ways because of the privileges that we hold, or because of the lack of privileges that we hold. So, as a mental health professional, I can tell you, you have to be very cognizant of where you are as a human first to be able to show up. There are many times in session where I was speechless. I didn't know what would be the best thing to say to soothe that person because there was nothing I could say to soothe them. I've had people I've had clients that were working with me around their relational issues, their depression, or something else going on. When the war in Gaza started and it started seeing awful pictures of kids, they're like, Dr. Q, I cannot come in here once a week, complain about me and my marriage right now when I'm in America with roof over my head, a job, and my kids are safe. People were dealing with guilt of survival and privilege.
That's real.
So there's no formula to make this go away, yet you have to continue to move forward. And when we're talking about halal and haram, recognizing that whether we're in America or another part of the world, there are haram things going on in Muslim countries too,
It's that.
right?
Yeah.
And prayer and your faith, right? Prayer. Umid Center here has a relaxation room, but it's also our prayer room. I am so blessed to know that I have Muslim clients that come in here and actually say their salah. You know how much blessing that brings to me and the community and the center in itself? And if my dad was alive today, I guarantee you, Preacher Moss, he would have been the happiest man on earth to know that his daughter created a space for prayer. And
That's
when
huge.
we're talking about, so we're talking about environmental trauma, right? I mean, uh, uh, even your own grief you mentioned earlier, right? So as you're doing as a mental health professional, I've also had to do my own healing to be able to show up in healing ways. My losing my own parents, my mom passed away from COVID, so you can just imagine
Wow.
the pandemic, and then actually seeing a loved one close to you passing away with a disease that some people thought was made up. That in itself was a transformative experience for me. I'm still healing, I'm still grieving. And I think with life comes pain, and your faith has to be really strong, and you have to know and understand that there is something bigger than this, and we are going to get through this as a community.
Inshallah. Well, listen, we run up on our 45 minutes. Um, I personally want to thank you for coming to the show. This was amazing. Sister, if you are open to it, we love to have you back for part two.
Thank you
If
for
you're
having.
open, if your schedule allows.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
I am personally,
Absolutely. We can schedule in after we get off.
I am personally thankful and grateful that you came. I hope that people that tuned in got, if not a little bit, a lot of information about the heart, the cope, and the importance of mental health, because some people think mental health, mental wellness, and they use them in the two different things. Like I said, the mental health piece is to me so aligned with spiritual health, and that you came on our show today.
Mm-hmm.
We feel honored on behalf of myself and Sister Donna Whitfield. Thank you so much for coming on the show, the shout out show, and all the shout out show family and people on IG. Please, you get a chance, make dua for Sister Dr. Qureshi, her family. And again, we really appreciate you dropping these gems on us. Inshallah, we'll have you back soon.
Inshallah, Jazakallah for having me here. I'm very passionate about this work. Please link with me on LinkedIn. I also, Umid Center has a YouTube channel as well. You can find me on Psychology Today. Just type in Dr. Qureshi or Umid Center. I'm not hard to find. It may take me time to get back to you, but I'm not hard to find. And I'm so fortunate enough to connect with you and have this platform to get the word out. And I can't wait to be back.
All right. Thank you so much, sister. We
Thank you
appreciate
so much for having me.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah continue to increase you and bless you in this world and the next for your good deeds. Thank you so much.